Individuals' road towards their permanent resident status has taken a detour, according to an immigration consultant. Manitoba has made significant changes to the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, and Gerard Haggett believes it will negatively impact immigration to the province. Let's get into it.
Thank you for having me here today. My name's Gerard Haggett. I'm an immigration consultant. My company is GH Immigration Services here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I have been in business now for about 5 years, and my immigration business is extremely diversified. I do almost all areas of immigration, everything from permanent residency to study permits, work permits. I work with all the federal programs as well as the provincial programs all across Canada. And I do a lot when it comes to MPNP because MPNP, of course, being here, and I've always felt it was one of the most immigration-friendly programs that there actually is in Canada until the changes that come down.
Yeah, we'll definitely get more into that. But speaking of immigration and the work that you're doing, and you're mentioning you cover a lot of different areas inside of the immigration sector. When someone is thinking about migrating to a new country, here to Canada specifically, for the work that you're doing, like what sort of timeline are you thinking about when someone should be reaching out? Like, should they be reaching out to you when they're first thinking about moving, while they're in the middle of the process, while they're already here? What does that pipeline look like?
Well, depending on the situation they're doing, if they're under regular immigration programs, like looking for permanent residency or very specifically, that is an extensive. It takes about anywhere from 1 to 2 years for permanent residency. So reaching out early in their thoughts is first to get an idea of what kind of requirements they're going to need, documentation for them to start working on, things like language skills, IELTS, CELPIP, any of the other TEF, whatever work program they need to verify their language skills. When it comes to education, foreign education, that is, they need to get things like certification of their education. Things like under WEST program is one where they find out how their current education, how it qualifies in Canada. It gives it like if it's a 3-year diploma degree overseas, will it be equivalent to a 3-year diploma here in Canada? So those things need to be verified as well. So getting all those documents together prior to even approaching someone for myself is very imperative, and it's a good idea to check in, find out what you need, and that's the first. So if they're looking at coming as a student, they have to should be looking at a time frame about 1 year out. And the reason for it is, they have to apply to a school. They have to get a school program that they're going to be looking at coming into. And that's the first step. Then applying to the school, get a letter of acceptance from the school or an LOA. And now with the PAL system, the provincial attestation letter they have to get as well. Then you have to look at getting a study permit. So the time frame there ends up being anywhere about 7 or 8 months just to be able to get that process, because the immigration process is anywhere from 7 weeks to 3 or 4 months for decisions on study permits. So it's very imperative to get way ahead of the game when it comes to there.
Because, there's nothing worse than, you're here for a while, you've been studying, and all of a sudden it's like, this deadline is coming up and I haven't even thought about things yet.
Exactly. So when it comes to, now we're going to look at one of the reasons one of my jobs are doing is when I'm looking at bringing either a student, a worker, or anybody from PR. My job is to look at them and plan out the next couple of years of their process. Not just the education part or not just the PR, but when they get here, looking at what province to come into because of the education process, which is the most suitable for the style of education they're looking for. So you don't want to look at farming when you're in Toronto, right? So you look at trying to put people in the proper part of the country that has to do with their education.
Finding a place where they're going to find the most success.
Exactly, where they'll have chances of getting a job offer after, or getting a job when they complete their studies, or help them during their studies, because having a job in their field when they complete their studies speeds their entire process up. And then they can apply under different programs because their NOC or like their education matches with their work. So that's really super imperative. So that's the one thing. And they also have to look at, when they're doing their education, is to plan what the next step of after their education, their work permit. That's the next big step they have to look at. If they're coming here on a 1-year program, they can get a 1-year post-grad work permit. That 1-year post-grad work permit goes by very, very quickly. So planning what's going to happen at the end of your education, going through that work permit for your permanent residency, is very important to plan that ahead.
Well, I mean, when we're looking here at Canada, immigration is such an integral part to the growth of this country.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't remember the exact estimates, but it's something about like 34% of the country by 2034, something like that, like, will be immigrants in the...
Oh, absolutely. Like, some of the statistics that when it comes to that, like, it's not even that. Over the next 10 years, the baby boomers, which I'm the end of the baby boomers here, a lot of them are either retired or passed, one of the two. So because of that, that's going to make an enormous hole in our whole Canadian structure. We're talking about our social structure. We're talking about our tax system. We're talking about our healthcare system. Everything. All those things are going to be an incredibly imperative thing to deal with. And immigration is the only way we're going to do it now. Because reality is, like yourself and myself, when we have with children and that, most people are only having 1 or 2 child, which is definitely not going to support our tax base going forward. So immigration is not just an integral part of the system, it's a necessity at this point. We need the immigration. We need the immigrants coming to Canada, foreign nationals, to support our work structure and every other part of our Canadian economy. A lot of people don't understand that. There's a lot of negative people that when it comes to immigration, they're saying, we don't need this, we don't need this. They don't realize how important it is. The collapse of our economy would be very short, and it would happen very quickly if we don't have the immigration to offset the dying people or the retiring people. It would be very, very imperative. That has to be looked at.
Yeah, just to follow up on those numbers I was given. So according to Statistics Canada, by 2041, the proportion of immigrants to Canadian population could reach from 29.1 to 34%. So I just want to give some clarification to the numbers I was throwing out before.
It's an incredible number. You just think about that. If you take 34% of our population, that's about that's probably around almost 20 million people that will be required just to help fill the needs of our growing economy. And that's the other thing. We want to stay competitive. We want to grow, and we want to diversify our country, which is very diversified as it is. But we want to have that ability, and they're focus on a lot of skilled workers, and that be able to bring our country to a new level when it comes to skills. And
exactly. Diversification and diversity is just a strength for our country. New ideas, new people coming in. And I think that's the unique experience of Canada, is that it's not necessarily like a melting pot like the United States, where it all becomes this kind of homogenous version where it's like they bring in some things, but it's like you are an American once and foremost. Whereas in Canada, it's more of a mosaic that everyone is like Arab Canadian or Sudanese Canadian. It's that celebration of culture and diversity.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that statement. I think it's just so important, and that's one of the most unique things about our country is that diversity. And everywhere you travel in Canada, diversity is there. And it's amazing. And I travel a lot in Canada, and I see so much of it, and it's wonderful. And I just love it. And I think it's great that we are the way we are and how open we are to diversification and to other people coming into our country. I think it's so great.
So the MPNP program recently went through some changes, and you've got some thoughts on it. How about we just start with what exactly is the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, what it was before, how it's changed, and then we can kind of move from there.
Okay. The program it's basically, the nomination program is for individuals who are here in Manitoba working, like if they educated or working, they could be working under LMIAs, which are labor market impact assessments, which are like foreign workers that are here for short terms. They were able to qualify under MPNP. And students is another way. The students were here working, doing their education. After that, they'd done their post-grad work permit, and then they would be able to apply for Manitoba nominations to be able to, what it is it's basically saying, I'm here in Manitoba. I love Manitoba and I want to live here. So I wanted to apply for my immigration status to stay here in Manitoba. So it's the first step. What it does is it took a lot of individuals that were doing, say, there's multiple programs and it's on a tier system. It goes from 0 to 5. 0, 1, 2s, and 3s are your education programs that are everything from management to supervisor's position and everything else. Now, the other part of the program when it comes to the federal program is the 4 and 5 category, which are things like people that are here, PSW, personal support workers, or just even counter clerks, whatever. That's the ones that they fall into that type of category. The whole idea with the MPNP, it helped merge those individuals that are in classifications everywhere from 0 to 5 that would be able to qualify for a PNP nomination. Either they completed their education process at the edge of education and they had a job offer, they could immediately apply under MPNP and get a nomination to be able to go towards permanent residency. If they did their education here, they couldn't find a job under their skill, but they could find another job. They had to work 6 months, and then they could apply for their MPNP nomination. And the other one was, if they were here on, say, if they had migrated from another province into Manitoba, they had to work 1 year and then they could apply for an MPNP nomination. Under those forms there, it engulfed everybody. Everybody that came here under these ways, they could able to have the chance from nomination to permanent residency. And that was one of the gifts that was really great about the MPNP nomination. What happened was in the change of the situation is they went and took it so that because Manitoba was so concerned about people leaving the province after getting their MPNP or after getting their nomination or getting their PR, that they said, well, we have to do some changes. So one of the biggest change, the major change they did is they took individuals that were here in Manitoba that didn't have family members, and they excluded them. They chose that you have a family member here in Manitoba, that means you have a less chance of leaving the province. So it eliminated a whole group of individuals that were here in Manitoba, either through education or work already by doing that.
People who were potentially going to stay here anyways.
Exactly. So because one of the biggest issues that I always, like when I looked at this change is there's people that leave the province after PR, but there's also people that migrate into our province as well. So maybe it doesn't offset it as quickly as you want, but it does. Manitoba has been growing. And there's a lot of people that are moving into Manitoba because our economy is a little bit more stable. The cost of living here is a lot more stable, both housing and food. Well, we know food is expensive everywhere now.
Yeah.
In general, it was a more economical place to live. Now, one of the problems with the changes of this MPNP program, with the changes, not just the fact that they changed it to just family, if you had family ties here in Manitoba, with the federal program, they just came out and said they're going to reintroduce the CEC program, which is the Canadian Experience Class. The Canadian Experience Class really worked for students that were here in Manitoba, or not just in Manitoba, that were educating in Canada. With 1 year's experience, they were able to apply for the permanent residency. Now, with the changes to the Manitoba program, you've eliminated that whole group of people then they had to migrate to the federal program. The problem with the CEC class is it only qualifies under 0, 1, 2, or 3. So anybody who was in a 4 or a 5 in the tier did not qualify. So they have no option at this time for immigration.
So we're continuing to reduce the number of potential people.
Exactly, by doing that. So if you have an international student that's here and done a 3-year program on a BSc, you're looking at anywhere from $60,000 to $150,000 for tuition fees. Then you're also looking at they work in the next 2 to 3 years in our economy to help support the economy and help support workers or the corporations. So all of a sudden you've eliminated that ability for those. They're still here to be able to do that, but at the end of that 3 years, they had no hope of being able to immigrate. So they would end up having to leave the country. Pouring all that money into our economy is a very unfair step under the MPNP system. with the changes that we're going here. So, and it also will affect our the educations going forward, because myself in my business, I can't rightfully say to a person, hey, come on to Manitoba right now. It's great. We have this great program. You do your education, you get your schooling, and then you'll be able to get your permanent residency, when unless they have a family member here now, they will not have that option. So we have gone and taken that whole class of individuals. The schools like the University of Manitoba, U of W, and everything else will be greatly affected by this, because people like myself will say, no, I'm not recommending people for these schools anymore, because there's no hope for them to get their permanent residency. It's well over 80% of the individuals who come here for education that want to get their PR. Some people do go back home, but most of them are here to get their PR and start a new life here in Canada. So by the changes that they've done, they've eliminated an entire group of individuals that have had that ability to immigrate and stay here in the province. So, and you take things like Red River College. Red River College offers an enormous amount of diploma programs of 1 or 2 year, and that's where you get your personal support workers and home care work providers, and a lot of your other entry-level positions were in those tier 4 and 5. Now those individuals have no hope whatsoever, and the schools will suffer because those courses are not going to fill now, because they don't have a chance of immigrating down the road.
Yeah. The changes to this program, the goal was to try and retain people in Manitoba, but at the end, it might be pushing more people away from Manitoba.
Absolutely. It pushes them incredibly amount of Manitoba and that. So it's like the economic impact. You have many of the, like you have things like Bueller and 24/7 and a bunch of the other corporations that hire these students to work in there, and all of a sudden they're not going to have these students, because they're not going to come here to educate and work here, because there's no chance of them having their permanent residency at the end. So this is going to impact both the education process, and it'll working like our work environment, plus our economy in general, because we are losing an entire group, demographics of people here, not just students, but foreign workers that are coming here under LMIAs as well. It'll eliminate them as well. So you're getting taking a great big chunk out of the economy by doing this move.
This plan clearly has backfired. What would you say would be a way to redevelop it? Would it be just kind of reversing course?
Reversing course would probably be the easiest form of doing it. I think that one of the things I feel that if they even come up with bring the requirements out slightly farther, like the big thing is under MPNP, one of the promises that once you get your PR, that you're going to spend at least 2 years in the province before you consider moving out. That is one of the conditions of the PR. If they implement a system, maybe some kind of a letter that they have to register with or something like that, they can have a conditional PR. That until they meet that 2 years that was there, they cannot move out of the province, or their PR, their nomination would be canceled, and they would have to look at reapplying into another province. To me, that's another type of form of way of doing this. But I really, truthfully feel the old system was a good system.
Okay.
And I think the way they had it laid out, it was very easy to understand, easy for international candidates to file for it and to deal with. It was very cut and dry, and you look at it and it's very easy to figure out. Now, changing a bunch of the system and other things, it may be more difficult to understand, more difficult for them to be able to even get the classifications, especially when we're looking at, like, to me, the big issues are the tier 4 and the tier 5 and under the federal program are the ones that are really losing out. And that, because the other ones,
if you're not even this kind of tier of candidate, we're not even interested.
We're not even interested in you. But it's okay. We'll take your money. We'll put you through school. We'll let you work here for a year, and then you can go home. That's basically what they're saying.
It feels very manipulative.
It is. It's a slap in the face. And that's the way I look at it when it comes to international candidates. It's not a very fair system. I understand why they did it, but I don't think it's a fair system.
So it'll be interesting to see the ramifications of this program looking forward. Like, how much is it going to affect Manitoba before they change course? And at that point, is the damage permanent at that point? Like, what sort of reputation has Manitoba set?
Exactly. And there's one other area that is considered, like they are they're cutting foreign workers from 6.5% down to 5%. That's one of the goals of the federal government, is to help get other people employed in that when it comes to Canada. That's one of the things. So that means from 3.25 million foreign workers down to 2.5 million, somewhere around there. So you're losing about 750,000 workers for one thing. Now, that game plan looks good on paper right now, but we're in a recession. What happens a year from now when we come out of that recession and we do not have the workers to fill these positions? There was I just read a report yesterday. They were talking about that we're starting to fall back in that when it comes to productivity in the country. And by doing what they're doing now, it's going to create a big problem in a year or 2 years as we go through a new growth and economic growth here in Canada. So this will be broad-based. I think that they're looking, it's too short of a time frame with the major changes between both the provincial and the federal government, what they have done to the immigration system, because I think it's going to come back and bite them very badly about a year or so from now.
Are our government officials just not working with immigration specialists? Like, why are these decisions being made if yourself and others are seeing that down the line this is going to be detrimental to the country?
Well, we have our lobbying group it's called KPIC, and KPIC there works very, very directly with the immigration. And when we persons like myself, we submit questions through KPIC who goes to the immigration minister to discuss these problems, and we try to get them to see our point of view and maybe do some alterations to whatever they're going to do. And that, so we can request it. But it's still at the federal level. They're the ones who still make the big decision, and they're the ones who say yay or nay. We're not going to bend. This is engraved in stone now. This is the way we're going to deal with this. So I don't think our voice is heard enough. And especially, I think they're going to find that out in about a year from now.
Yeah, unfortunately, when the country is dealing with the ramifications of it.
Absolutely, and there'll be a lot of panic mode, a lot of employers looking for scrambling, trying to find people to fill positions. Like the federal government, the whole idealism is they're saying that by cutting back foreign workers and all that stuff coming into the province and to the rest of the country, is that's going to force a lot of, like we have had enormous amount of immigration from Ukraine and a lot of the other war-torn countries over the last couple of years. They're trying to get them employed, and when it comes to employed in the Canadian society. But a lot of those immigrants that are from those different countries don't have the skills, and a lot of them are low-skilled workers. Well, what about our high-skilled positions that are going to be we won't have people to fill those positions because we're filling too many of the low skills. So we're going to have an imbalance when it comes to the growth of our immigration, and that when it comes going forward.
It's almost like a leaky faucet, that there's just this leak that keeps happening, and then over time, it just kind of builds up into a multitude of different problems.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happens. I think it's short-term thinking instead of long-term thinking. I think that's the problem is I don't think they weighed the pros and cons of anything, and I think it'll rear its ugly head a year from now.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, that we keep seeing decisions being made for the right now. Like, oh, let's see how it affects people right now. It's like, but what about 5 years from now, 10 years?
Exactly, because this could end up really hindering the growth of Manitoba with this MPNP program, with the changes here. And it's not just a matter of the schools being affected and the workers being affected, but just the overall growth of the population to support the tax base in that here, right in our own province. Like, I think this is going to be an enormous thing going forward. I don't think they've seen how great this is, because I look at how many candidates come to me that have no ties to Manitoba versus how many have ties to Manitoba, and it is less than 20% that have ties compared to how many don't have ties here, but have the education and the work experience that is required under the old system.
Interesting. I guess we'll have to see what happens from it. So hopefully, if things do start turning or going badly, they'll change course, and hopefully it hasn't impacted our reputation too much that people are like, okay, now that this program is back to the way it was, you could recommend it again and people will start coming back to the province.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's what it comes down to. And like there was 2 rallies over the last in the last couple of weeks now down at the legislative. Last week, I went to the one last week supporting the students in that because I think it's very important. I think they're getting a raw end of this. And so I went there to supporting it. And a couple of the MLAs were there and they were listening to the students and that. How it'll affect and how much their words, the value of their words do when it comes to changes and looking at the MPNP system. I think they're going to reevaluate this. I have this, and I'm even telling people I think they are going to relook at this, revisit it, and see what other ways they can do changes to the program to make this viable again. Because all these students are running their study permits and their work permits are expiring. They have no hope going forward, so you're forcing them to leave the country. What a way to get a bad name in a real hurry.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Thank you so much for coming in to talk with us about this very important issue of how it is, affecting Manitobans and future Manitobans as well.
Yes, and I'm more than happy to do this. I think it's great. I think that people really need to understand it a little bit more, and hopefully this gets out. Like I love doing stuff like that. I'm hoping somebody in the government sees this and starts looking at it and think, oh yeah, we never thought of that, and starts revisiting this and look at some changes going forward. I think it's super important. But I'm really thankful to be invited here because I think it's great. I think it's super what you're doing.
So where can people go to find out more information about your services?
They can just go online. They can look me up online. You can Google me. Like TikTok, I'm on WhatsApp, on Instagram, I'm on everything. So you can find me. There's so many ways to find me. You can just call me, set up an appointment in that, and come in and see me. TikTok has been very, very a strong avenue lately for me when it comes to this. So being able to bring a lot of information out to people in that. So you can just Google GH Immigration Services in Winnipeg, and I'd be more than happy to take your questions.
Have any stories you'd like us to share or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media or reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was U Talk, and have yourself a good one.